biggest lesson learned in my perception is the fact that some of the disasters that have happened are of such a magnitude that it's very, very difficult to justify the investment in continuity provisions and also in preventative controls. So for example, the severe weather-related incidents like Hurricane Harvey in the US, but also in the eastern region, for example, China had severe flooding as well. In Africa, we've seen the Congo as well as Zimbabwe and Sierra Leone also had some severe flooding. And in Peru as well, in South America. So actually all across the globe, we've seen some major severe weather-related incidents that are of such a magnitude in terms of loss of life, but also massive destruction of buildings and infrastructure, that it's extremely difficult to justify and be able to come up with the funds to be prepared to the nth degree, to prepare your business for that kind of situation. So that's a very, very challenging lesson. Now, the second lesson I'd like to highlight is the unpredictability of some of the disasters that have recently happened, especially when we're talking about cyber-related incidents. It started actually with the ransomware outbreaks in a number of years ago, where we really didn't know that ransomware was something that could happen. So it's very difficult to plan for something if you don't even know what the nature of it will be. So in the last 12 months, we've seen some further examples of that. For example, with the WannaCry and Pedia malware and data breach related threats. And once again, the lesson is, how do you plan for something that you don't know the actual content or the nature of and what the impacts might be? So that's a very, very challenging situation that we're still dealing with today. To be able to find the right controls in place and to test those controls to the right degree, to be able to be comfortable and hand on heart be able to say we are actually protected against those sorts of threats. The third lesson learned I'd like to highlight is the fact that we may have plans if we do a good job. We might have some continuity plans, some preventative controls, but in my experience from doing the work with organizations in this field of continuity planning, most of the time people on the day that a disaster happens, they don't actually know what page to find their procedure on, or what is actually the page that's still up to date that contains their checklist. So in real life disasters, we find that a lot of the plans either are not used or are heavily out of date or in a form that is not accessible when an incident happens. For example, you're standing with your smartphone on the street because you've been evacuated, the phone goes flat, the battery goes flat, so how do you then still get your procedure on how to respond? So we find that actually the plans are either not in a good shape or not in a form that can be used properly. And also the third lesson there is, well, staff are actually often not incident ready. So they may have seen a plan in the past, but they haven't actually rehearsed it and they don't really know what their role is. And they're not ready any time of the day or week or month for an incident to happen and for them to respond properly and confidently. That question is gets the full answer yes in my world, and specifically because some of the incidents that are happening, we cannot actually prevent them, or we cannot have enough funds or knowledge to prevent them with the right controls in place. So the only thing that really we should be then in that case relying on is a continuity plan, because that is actually, well, no matter what actually happens, is something that's going to help us. Well, in my view, we should actually stay away completely from the detailed planning for certain incidents or particular threats. Because as we've seen, a lot of threats that have happened are combinations of events or certain unpredictable situations that we actually cannot properly prepare for. So how I would approach that for businesses is just focus on the consequences. Do not focus on the nature or the cause of incidents. Focus on the consequence. For example, the 5 areas that I would highlight there are loss of staff or unavailability of staff. Could be because of strike or disease or other reasons why the staff are, for example, at home dealing with some disaster at home. So no matter what happens, actually the consequence is unavailability of your staff, and what plan do you have in place for that. The second consequence scenario would be then loss of building or denial of access to the building. The third area would be loss of IT or unavailability or uncontactability of your IT systems. The fourth area, lack of availability of your voice communication. And the fifth area I would then focus on would be loss of external supplier. So those are the 5 areas. If I would recommend anything to any business, focus on those 5 consequence scenarios rather than any detailed plans for all the incidents that might happen, because you're often not on the right track with that, or something might happen that's a combination of unpredictable events. Right, so that was my summary for the past 12 months and what's coming up for the next 12 months. Hope you enjoyed this session, and I look forward to hearing more from you. And if you need any assistance with business continuity planning or risk management or information security, please find us through the PCB, and I look forward to hearing more from you there. Thank you.